Joining me now is Liberal Senator James Paterson, Labor Senator Kimberley Kitching to discuss all this. Guys, thank you so much indeed for your time. Start with the coronavirus crisis. I noticed suddenly you can you can't go to church en masse, but you can go to a protest in great numbers. But talking about the way that the stats of who is actually got the coronavirus, who dies of it or from it, that confusion there. James, are you confident this coronavirus crisis has not actually been exaggerated?
Well, we've tested that question a bit with the Chief Medical Officer, Brendan Murphy, before the COVID-19 Senate Select Committee that I'm the Deputy Chair of. And I've got to say he's provided good, solid answers to that. And I think you can have reasonably good confidence in the Australian data that we have. Certainly some of the data from other jurisdictions I would take with a heavy grain of salt.
Yeah, but Kimberley, we were told between 50,000 and 150,000 of us would die, and the death toll is only just over 100, which is sad for the families involved, but 100 is not 50,000 or let alone 150,000.
Well, we know, Andrew, though, that in jurisdictions, like for example, I'm thinking of Lombardy in northern Italy, where there's a similar sort of demographic, there's a similar sort of healthcare system, but they were overwhelmed. So I think that we in Australia have done very well to contain it to so few, very sad, but so few deaths. And I think that Australians should be commended for that and for following through on some of the procedures, which, as we've discussed before, Andrew, it's hard for people, but that has kept that number low, and it has kept the infection rate down as well.
Yeah, some of the restrictions, yes, but other restrictions, and I have to point out the demographic is different. Italians are, the mean age is 10 years older than us for a virus that strikes the elderly, and the health system is nowhere near as good as ours. But anyway, whatever, I just think we need to have an accounting here, because otherwise we'll make the same mistakes next time with catastrophic consequences. But James, to this federal court ruling today that we discussed earlier in the show, that said the Gillard government acted unlawfully in stopping the cattle trade overnight without trying to keep it going with reforms, without trying to sort it out with Indonesia, destroying businesses, no warning. How important is this ruling?
Well, what it tells us, Andrew, is what we should have already known, is that in a Westminster system in Australia, ministers are not dictators. They are ministers who are subject to the rule of law just like any other decision maker, and they have to follow appropriate process when they make decisions, and they have to take into account due consideration of facts and the impact that it'll have on people's livelihoods. They can't just, at the whim, at the stroke of the pen, take away people's livelihoods and not have any consequences. So I think it's a welcome decision in the sense that it will focus the minds of all ministers that they have legal obligations that apply to them, and they have to live up to those legal obligations, otherwise they will be subject to court action, as they should be.
Well, it's interesting to hear a politician cheer about a decision against the government that we're all going to have to pay for. But I tend to agree with you. You got any problems with this decision, Kimberley?
No, but I would say that I think Joseph Ludwig, when he made that decision, remember what prompted that decision, and that was a Four Corners program. And I remember it vividly.
You're a fool if you believe the Four Corners programs.
I remember it vividly because it was barbaric. It showed barbaric practices. It gave. I don't think that Joseph acted out of anything other than decency, and I don't think any farmer in Australia, or any Australian for that matter, would have seen that program and thought that that was okay to kill animals in a cruel, barbaric way. Now, but I do think that what the
judge said was you could have reformed it.
Yeah, and that period of time that was taken where we did ban it, that did stop and allow accountability in the Indonesian system. I do think that when there is executive power that is exercised, it should be done cautiously. And I think we're seeing that in terms of robo-debt with this current government, where a minister has taken executive power and used it inappropriately, and there's a class action. And hundreds of thousands of Australians were affected by the misuse of that power. So I do agree with James. I do think that executive power should be exercised carefully and prudently.
Are you agreeing with Kimberly there, James, about the robo-debt issue, which embarrassed the government this week?
Well, the robo-debt, as you say, Andrew, is a very unfortunate affair. There's no question about it. It's obviously most unfortunate for the people who were directly affected by it. It's unfortunate for taxpayers who are effectively going to have to pay twice for the scheme now. And it, like all other instances like this, are a reminder for ministers to exercise great care and diligence in the way that they implement decisions, yes.
Both of you, Kimberly, have admired your stand on China, and particularly, Kimberly, with you. I mean, it's a little bit hard in the Labor Party to say some of the things you've been doing, so I congratulate you. I do notice that China is loving this, really, seeing these race riots in America. And Hong Kong's leader today blasted the United States for double standards because she says the US defended violent protesters, pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong last year, but now it's attacking violent protesters in the United States. Is there a point here?
I think that, well, firstly, we hold America to a very high standard. I think we're very aware of America. I think we hold it to a high standard, as we should. And, we hope that there is calm in that country. America is our friend and our ally. And we hope, as we would hope, that in any country where there's such unrest, that quickly that order is restored, that calm is restored, that peace is restored.
Of course,
I think,
but just the double standards. The problem, you think there are double standards?
Yeah, but I think the problem is that the world's attention is diverted to America, and what we're seeing is the national security laws which passed over the weekend in Hong Kong and then in Beijing. And I think those, for the first time in Hong Kong, a peaceful protest about Tiananmen Square will not be held on the 30th anniversary.
That's incredible. That is incredible.
So already,
that was such a big annual event when I was living there. I think that's just shocking. James, do you think there's a double standard here? Americans criticising Hong Kong for the way it dealt with violent protests there, and now it's got this problem in its own shores?
Well, Andrew, I'm very saddened and concerned as a fan of America to see it going through very troubled times. And America's history is a country founded on great values, but 200 years of struggling to uphold those values always and consistently, like all men are created equal. And so, we all wish the best for the United States in getting on top of this peacefully and calmly, as Kimberly said. But there's obviously a couple of differences here between what's happening in the United States and what's happening in China or Hong Kong. And that is that in the United States, it's a democracy. It has an independent judiciary. It has a free and independent media that will scrutinise decisions of government. When police act unlawfully, as they appear to have done in this case, there are very serious consequences for them. They can be charged, convicted and sent to jail. You can't say any of those things about the Chinese legal system. Sadly, you can't even say it anymore about the Hong Kong legal system because of the way in which the Chinese Communist Party has trampled all over it and undermined the one country, two systems policies. And so, no, there isn't a fair comparison. There isn't a fair... you can't compare those two. It's just not fair.
James Paterson, Kimberly Kitching, thank you both so much for your time.